Good morning, everyone. I hope that you're enjoying my videos as much as I'm enjoying making them. Today is Monday, April the 5th, 2021. In Hebrew, it is the 23rd of Nisan, 5781. And today we will start reading in the book of Exodus. I'm sitting here at my favorite coffee place at Panera in the beautiful mountains of North Carolina, and it is a very sunny day. Now, in Hebrew, this book is called Shemot, which is spelled Shin, Mem, Vav, Tav, and it means names. So, starting chapter 1, verse 1. These are the names of the sons of Israel who came into Egypt with Yaakov. Each man came with his household: Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. All told, there were 70 descendants of Yaakov. Joseph was already in Egypt. Joseph died, as did all his brothers and all that generation. The descendants of Israel were fruitful, increased abundantly, multiplied, and grew very powerful. The land became filled with them. Now there arose a new king over Egypt. He knew nothing about Joseph, but said to his people, "Look, the descendants of Israel have become a people too numerous and powerful for us. Come, let's use wisdom in dealing with them. Otherwise they'll continue to multiply, and in the event of war they might ally themselves with our enemies, fight against us, and leave the land altogether." So they put slave masters over them to oppress them with forced labor, and they built for Pharaoh the storage cities of Pithom and Ramses. But the more the Egyptians oppressed them, the more they multiplied and expanded, until the Egyptians came to dread the people of Israel and worked them relentlessly, making their lives bitter with hard labor, digging clay, making bricks, all kinds of field work. And in all this toil they were shown no mercy. Moreover, the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives. One of them was called Shiphrah, and the other Puah. "When you attend the Hebrew women and see them giving birth," he said, "if it's a boy, kill him. But if it's a girl, let her live." But the midwives were God-fearing women, so they didn't do as the king of Egypt ordered, but let the boys live. The king of Egypt summoned the midwives and demanded of them, "Why have you done this and let the boys live?" The midwives answered Pharaoh, "It's because the Hebrew women aren't like the Egyptian women. They go into labor and give birth before the midwife arrives." And therefore God prospered the midwives, and the people continued to multiply and grow very powerful. Indeed, because the midwives feared God, he made them founders of families. And then Pharaoh gave this order to all his people: every boy that is born, throw in the river, but let all the girls live. Chapter 2. A man from the family of Levi took a woman also descended from Levi as his wife. When she conceived and had a son, upon seeing what a fine child he was, she hid him for 3 months. When she could no longer hide him, she took a papyrus basket, coated it with clay and tar, put the child in it, and placed it among the reeds on the riverbank. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe in the river, while her maids and attendants walked along the riverside. Spotting the basket among the reeds, she sent her slave girl to get it. She opened it and looked inside, and there in front of her was a crying baby boy. Moved with pity, she said, "This must be one of the Hebrews' children." At this point, his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Would you like me to go and find you one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" Pharaoh's daughter answered, "Yes, go." So the girl went and called the baby's own mother. Pharaoh's daughter told her, "Take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will pay you for doing it." So the woman took the child and nursed it. Then when the child had grown some, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and she began to raise him as her son. She called him Moshe, Moses, which means pull out, explaining, because I pulled him out of the water. One day when Moshe was a grown man, he went out to visit his kinsmen, and he watched them struggling at forced labor. He saw an Egyptian strike a Hebrew, one of his kinsmen. He looked this way and that, and when he saw that no one was around, he killed the Egyptian and hid his body in the sand. The next day he went out and saw two Hebrew men fighting with each other. To the one in the wrong he said, "Why are you hitting your companion?" He retorted, "Who appointed you ruler and judge over us? Do you intend to kill me the way you killed the Egyptian?" Moshe became frightened. Clearly, he thought, the matter has become known. When Pharaoh heard of it, he tried to have Moshe put to death. But Moshe fled from Pharaoh to live in the land of Midian. One day, as he was sitting by a well, the 7 daughters of the priest of Midian came to draw water. They had filled the troughs to water their father's sheep. When the shepherds came and tried to drive them away, but Moshe got up and defended them. Then he watered their sheep. When they came to Reuel, their father, he said, "How come you're back so soon today?" They answered, "An Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. More than that, he drew water for us and watered the sheep." He asked his daughters, "Where is he? Why did you leave the man there? Invite him to have something to eat." Moshe was glad to stay on with the man, and he gave Moshe his daughter Zipporah in marriage. She gave birth to a son, and he named him Gershon, foreigner there. For he said, "I have been a foreigner in a foreign land." Sometime during those many years, the king of Egypt died, but the people of Israel still groaned under the yoke of slavery, and they cried out, and their cry for rescue from slavery came up to God. God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. God saw the people of Israel, and God acknowledged them. Chapter 3. Now Moshe was tending the sheep of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. Leading the flock to the far side of the desert, he came to the mountain of God, to Horeb. The angel of Adonai appeared to him in a fire blazing from the middle of a bush. And he looked and saw that although the bush was flaming with fire, yet the bush was not being burned up. Moshe said, "I'm going to go over there and see this amazing sight and find out why the bush isn't being burned up." When Adonai saw that he had gone over to see, God called to him from the middle of the bush, "Moshe, Moshe." He answered, "Here I am." He said, "Don't come any closer. Take your sandals off your feet, because the place where you are standing is holy ground. I am the God of your father," he continued, "the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzhak, and the God of Yaakov." Moshe covered his face because he was afraid to look at God. Adonai said, "I have seen how my people are being oppressed in Egypt and heard the cry for release from their slave masters, because I know their pain. I have come down to rescue them from the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that country to a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the place of the Canaanite, Hittite, Amorite, Perizi, Hava, and Yebusi. Yes, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have seen how terribly the Egyptians oppressed them. Therefore now, come, and I will send you to Pharaoh, so that you can lead my people, the descendants of Israel, out of Egypt." Moshe said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and lead the people of Israel out of Egypt?" He replied, "I will surely be with you. Your sign that I have sent you will be that when you have led the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain." And God just told this to me, and I'm going to tell it, that remember whenever he told Abraham that they would be in that his descendants would be in a land for 400 years it was not theirs, and that they would become slaves, and that he would deliver them out. So that right there shows you that he does know the future, and he has, before we even get to whatever we're going to go through, he's already got it planned out ahead of time. And that's just, it kind of sends me cold chills, just thinking that, even though we cry out to him, it's already been in the works before we even before we even get to that, before we even know that we're going to be in that position, that our deliverance has already been worked out. Verse 11. Moshe said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and lead the people of Israel out of Egypt?" He replied, "I will surely be with you. Your sign that I have sent you will be that when you have led the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain." Moshe said to God, "Look, when I appear before the people of Israel and say to them, 'The God of your ancestors has sent me to you,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' what am I to tell them?" God said to Moshe, "Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, I am or I will be. Will be." And added, "Here is what to say to the people of Israel. Ehyeh, I am or I will be, has sent me to you." God said further to Moshe, "Say this to the people of Israel, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, Adonai, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzhak, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever. This is how I am to be remembered generation after generation. Go, gather the leaders of Israel together and say to them, Adonai, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Jacob, has appeared to me and said, I have been paying close attention to you and have seen what is being done to you in Egypt. And I have said that I will lead you up out of the misery of Egypt to the land of the Canaani, Hittite, Amorite, Perizi, Hivite, and Yebusi, to a land flowing with milk and honey. They will heed what you say. Then you will come, you and the leaders of Israel, before the king of Egypt, and you will tell them, Adonai, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Now, please, let us go 3 days' journey into the desert, so that we can sacrifice Adonai our God. I know that the king of Egypt will not let you leave unless he is forced to do so. But I will reach out my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders that I will do there. After that, he will let you go. Moreover, I will make the Egyptians so well disposed toward this people that when you go, you won't go empty-handed. Rather, all the women will ask their neighbors and house guests for silver and gold jewelry and clothing, with which you will dress your own sons and daughters. In this way, you will plunder the Egyptians. Chapter 4. Moshe replied, But I'm certain they won't believe me, and they won't listen to what I say, because they'll say, Adonai did not appear to you. Adonai answered him, What is that in your hand? And he said, A staff. He said, Throw it on the ground. And he threw it on the ground. It turned into a snake, and Moshe recoiled from it. Then Adonai said to Moshe, Put your hand out and take it by the tail. He reached out with his hand and took hold of it, and it became a staff in his hand. This is so that they will believe that Adonai, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzhak, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. Furthermore, Adonai said to him, Now put your hand inside your coat. He put his hand in his coat, and when he took it out, his hand was leprous, as white as snow. Then God said, Now put your hand back in your coat. He put his hand back in his coat, and when he took it out, it was as healthy as the rest of his body. If they won't believe you or heed the evidence of the first sign, they will be convinced by the second. But if they aren't persuaded even by both these signs and still won't listen to what you say, then take some water from the river and pour it on the ground. The water you take from the river will turn into blood on the dry land. Moshe said to Adonai, Oh, Adonai, I'm a terrible speaker. I always have been, and I know better now, even after you've spoken to your servant. My words come slowly, my tongue moves slowly. Adonai answered him, Who gives a person a mouth? Who makes a person dumb or deaf, keen-sighted or blind? Isn't it I, Adonai? Now, therefore, go, and I will be with your mouth and will teach you what to say. But he replied, Please, Lord, send someone else, anyone you want. At this, Adonai's anger blazed up against Moshe. He said, Don't you have a brother, Aaron, the Levi? I know that he's a good speaker. In fact, here he is now, coming out to meet you, and he'll be happy to see you. You will speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and his, teaching you both what to do. Thus, he will be your spokesman to the people. In effect, for you, he will be a mouth, and for him, you will be like God. Now take this staff in your hand because you need it to perform the signs. But this just reminds me of something that God has dealt with me recently. When it came time to for me to do these videos, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm 51 years old, so I wasn't raised with computers. And in fact, I didn't even get my first computer until like 2006. So, I'm not very computer literate. And so I was like, God, I don't know how to do this. And he told me that anything that he asks you to do, you can do it. You might think that you don't know how, but he will never ask you to do something that you are unable to do. So I've started with this attitude of whenever he asks me to do something, saying, I can do it. I don't really know what I'm doing, but everybody will guide me along. But I know that I can do it, and it's going to be successful, because why would he ask me to do something that was going to fail? So, and also, when I first started studying the Bible, it was almost 10 years ago now, and he said that my Sunday school teacher came to me on a Wednesday night, wanted me to teach on Sunday morning. I had no idea what I was doing. I told her, I said, I can't, but I will. But between Wednesday and Sunday, God showed me all these different resources that I already had at home that I didn't realize that I had. And the part that we were studying, we went through like each book of the Bible. And so we were in Matthew, and it was the part about where Jesus is coming through the Jerusalem with the palms being thrown in front of him, and I didn't understand it myself, so how could I teach it to my ladies' Sunday school class? And these were people that were grown up in church and were preachers' wives, and and so I didn't, or children of preachers, so I was that just made me even more nervous. In fact, one of the ladies in there was my preacher's wife. So I just felt inadequate, but I did such a wonderful job. And I'm not saying that, try to boast. Well, I'm boasting on God, but not on me. But I did such a good job, though, that I was asked to teach more and more and more, and I became the unofficial Sunday school teacher. We voted every year, but as to who was going to be Sunday school teacher, but I wasn't, voted in. I just basically took it over because I was asked almost every week to teach. So there you go. So I hope this is a blessing to you. So verse 18, Moshe left, returned to Yitro his father-in-law, and said to him, I beg you to let me go and return to my kinsmen in Egypt to see if they are still alive. Yitro said to Moshe, Go in peace. Adonai said to Moshe in Midian, Go on back to Egypt, because all the men who wanted to kill you are dead. So Moshe took his wife and sons, put them on a donkey, and started out for Egypt. Moshe took God's staff in his hand. And I said to Moshe, when you get back to Egypt, make sure that you do before Pharaoh every one of the wonders I have enabled you to do. Nevertheless, I am going to make him hard-hearted, and he will refuse to let the people go. Then you are to tell Pharaoh, Adonai says, Israel is my firstborn son. I have told you to let my son go in order to worship me, but you have refused to let him go. Well, then, I will kill your firstborn son. So this right here should be a sign to, later on, to Moshe, when all the plays are going on, that it has to get at least to that point where he's going to kill the firstborn son. At a lodging place on the way, Adonai met Moshe and would have killed him, had not Zipporah taken a flint stone and cut out the foreskin of her son. She threw it at his feet, saying, What a bloody bridegroom you are for me. But then God let Moshe be. She added, A bloody bridegroom because of the circumcision. Adonai said to Aharon, Go into the desert to meet Moshe. He went, met him at the mountain of God, and kissed him. Moshe told him everything Adonai had said and sent him, including all the signs he had ordered him to perform. Then Moshe and Aharon went and gathered together all the leaders of the people of Israel. Aharon said everything Adonai had told Moshe, who then performed the signs for the people to see. The people believed. When they heard that Adonai had remembered the people of Israel and seen how they were oppressed, they bowed their heads and worshipped. Chapter 5. After that, Moshe and Aharon came and said to Pharaoh, Here is what Adonai, the God of Israel, says. Let my people go so that they can celebrate a festival in the desert to honor me. But Pharaoh replied, Who is Adonai that I should obey what he says to let Israel go? I don't know Adonai, and I also won't let Israel go. They said, The God of the Hebrews has met with us. Please let us go 3 days' journey to the desert, so that we can sacrifice to Adonai our God. Otherwise he might strike us with a plague or with a sword. The king of Egypt answered them, Moshe and Aharon, what do you mean by taking the people away from their work? Get back to your labor. Look, Pharaoh added, the population of the land has grown, yet you are trying to have them stop working. That same day, Pharaoh ordered the slave masters and the people's foremen, You are no longer to provide the straw for the bricks that the people are making, as you did before. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. But you will require them to produce the same quantity of bricks as before. Don't reduce it, because they're lazing around. This is why they're crying, Let us go and sacrifice to our God. Give these people harder work to do. That will keep them too busy to pay attention to speeches full of lies. The people's slave masters went out, their foremen too, and said to the people, Here's what Pharaoh says. I will no longer give you straw. You go yourselves and get straw wherever you can find it. But your output is not to be reduced. So the people were dispersed throughout all the land of Egypt to gather stubble for straw. The slave masters kept pressing them, Keep working, make your daily quota, just as when straw was provided. The foremen of the people of Israel, whom Pharaoh's slave masters had appointed to be over them, were flogged and asked, Why haven't you fulfilled your quota of bricks yesterday and today, as you did formerly? Then the foreman of the people of Israel came and complained to Pharaoh, Why are you treating your servants this way? No straw was given to your servants, yet they keep telling us to make bricks. And now your servants are being flogged, but the fault lies with your own people. Lazy, he retorted. You're just lazy. That's why you say, Let us go and sacrifice to Adonai. Get going now and get back to work. No straw will be given to you, and you will still deliver the full amount of bricks." When they said, "You are not to reduce your daily production quota of bricks," the foreman of the people of Israel could see that they were in deep trouble. As they were leaving Pharaoh, they encountered Moshe and Aharon standing by the road, and they said to them, "May Adonai look at you and judge accordingly, because you have made us utterly abhorrent in the view of Pharaoh and his servants, and you have put a sword in their hands to kill us." Moshe returned to Adonai and said, "Adonai, why have you treated this people so terribly? What has been the value of sending me? For ever since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has dealt terribly with this people, and you haven't rescued your people at all." Now remember, he said that he would tell Pharaoh that he would kill his firstborn son, and he hasn't told Moshe to tell him that yet. So that should tell Moshe that this is like us. I mean, we're the same way, you know. God will tell us things and we'll forget, you know, especially whenever we get all upset over something. Chapter 6. Adonai said to Moshe, "Now you will see what I'm going to do to Pharaoh. With a mighty hand he will send them off. With force he will drive them from the land." God spoke to Moshe. He said to him, "I am Adonai. I appeared to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov as El Shaddai. Although I did not make myself known to them by my name, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, Adonai. Also with them I have established my covenant to give them the land of Canaan, the land where they wandered about and lived as foreigners. Moreover, I have heard the groaning of the people of Israel, whom the Egyptians are keeping in slavery, and I have remembered my covenant. Therefore, say to the people of Israel, I am Adonai. I will free you from the forced labor of the Egyptians, rescue you from their oppression, and redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgments. I will take you as my people, and I will be your God. Then you will know that I am Adonai your God, who freed you from the forced labor of the Egyptians. I will bring you into the land which I swore to give to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and I will give it to you as your inheritance. I am Adonai." Moshe said this to the people of Israel, but they wouldn't listen to him because they were so discouraged and their slavery was so cruel. Adonai said to Moshe, "Go in and tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the people of Israel leave his land." Moshe said to Adonai, "Look, the people of Israel haven't listened to me, so how will Pharaoh listen to me, poor speaker that I am?" But Adonai spoke to Moshe and Aharon and gave them orders concerning both the people of Israel and Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt. These were the heads of their families. The sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, were Hanoch, Palu, Hetzron, and Carmi. These were the families of Reuben. The sons of Shimon were Yemuel, Yamin, Ohad, Yakin, Sohar, and Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman. These were the families of Shimon. These are the names of the sons of Levi with their descendants: Gershon, Kahat, and Merari. Levi lived to be 137 years old. The sons of Gershon were Livni and Shimei with their families. The sons of Kahat were Amram, Yitzhar, Hebron, and Uziel. Kahat lived to be 133 years old. The sons of Merari were Mali and Mushi. These were the families of Levi with their descendants. And I hope you really paid attention to that, because this is very interesting. Amram married Jochebed, his father's sister. So Amram's father, remember, is Kahat. Kahat was the son of Levi. So that means that Jochebed was a daughter of Levi. And she bore him Aharon and Moshe. Amram lived to be 137 years old. The sons of Yitzhar were Korach, Nepheg, and Zikri. The sons of Uziel were Mishael, Elzaphan, and Sitri. Aharon married Elisheva, daughter of Abinadab, and sister of Nahshon, and she bore him Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. The sons of Korah were Aser, Elkanah, Abiasaph, and these were the Korah families. Eleazar, the son of Aharon, married one of the daughters of Petuel, and she bore him Phinehas. These were the heads of the families of Levi, family by family. These are the Aaron and Moshe to whom Adonai said, "Bring the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt, division by division," and who told Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the people of Israel leave Egypt. These are the same Moshe and Aharon. On the day when Adonai spoke to Moshe in the land of Egypt, he said, "I am Adonai. Tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, everything I say to you." Moshe answered to Adonai, "Look, I'm such a poor speaker that Pharaoh won't listen to me." Chapter 7. But Adonai said to Moshe, "I have put you in the place of God to Pharaoh, and Aharon your brother will be your prophet. You are to say everything I order you, and Aharon your brother is to speak to Pharaoh and tell him to let the people of Israel leave his land. But I will make him hard-hearted. Even though I will increase my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt, Pharaoh will not listen to you. Then I will lay my hand on Egypt and bring my armies, my people, the sons of Israel, out of the land of Egypt with great acts of judgment. Then, when I stretch out my hand over Egypt and bring the people of Israel out from among them, the Egyptians will know that I am Adonai." Moshe and Aharon did exactly what Adonai ordered them to do. Moshe was 80 years old and Aharon 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh. Adonai said to Moshe and Aharon, "When Pharaoh says to you, 'Perform a miracle,' tell Aharon to take his staff and throw it down in front of Pharaoh, so that it can become a snake." Moshe and Aharon went into Pharaoh and did this, as Adonai had ordered. Aharon threw down his staff in front of Pharaoh and his servants, and it turned into a snake. But Pharaoh in turn called for the sages and sorcerers, and they too, the magicians of Egypt, did the same thing, making use of their secret arts. Each one threw his staff down, and they turned into snakes. But Aharon's staff swallowed up theirs. Nevertheless, Pharaoh was made hard-hearted, and he didn't listen to them, as Adonai had said would happen. So now I'm wondering if the staff had turned back into a staff, or it was still looking like a snake whenever it ate up the other snakes. We'll find out later on, I'm sure. Adonai said to Moshe, "Pharaoh is stubborn. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning when he goes out to Go to Pharaoh in the morning when he goes out the water. Stand on the riverbank to confront him. Take in your hand the staff which was turned into a snake, and say to him, 'Adonai, the God of the Hebrews, sent me to you to say, let my people go, so that they can worship me in the desert. But until now you haven't listened. So Adonai says, this will let you know that I am Adonai. I will take the staff in my hand and strike the water in the river, and it will be turned into blood. The fish in the river will die. The river will stink, and the Egyptians won't want to drink water from the river." Adonai said to Moshe, "Say to Aharon, take your staff, reach out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over their rivers, canals, ponds, and all the reservoirs, so that they can turn into blood. There will be blood throughout the whole land of Egypt, even in the wooden buckets and stone jars." Moshe and Aharon did exactly what Adonai had ordered. He raised the staff and, in the sight of Pharaoh and his servants, struck the water in the river, and all the water in the river was turned into blood. The fish in the river died, and the river stank so badly that the Egyptians couldn't drink its water. There was blood throughout all the land of Egypt. But the magicians of Egypt did the same with their secret arts, so that Pharaoh was made hard-hearted and didn't listen to them, as Adonai had said would happen. Pharaoh just turned and went back to his palace, without taking any of this to heart. All the Egyptians dug around the river for water to drink, because they couldn't drink the river water. 7 days after Adonai had struck the river, Adonai said to Moshe, "Go into Pharaoh and say to him, 'Here is what Adonai says. Let my people go so that they can worship me. If you refuse to let them go, I will strike all your territory with frogs. The river will swarm with frogs. They will go up into your palace and go into your bedroom, onto your bed. They will enter the houses of your servants and your people and go into your ovens and kneading bowls. The frogs will climb all over you, your people and your servants." Chapter 8. Adonai said to Moshe, "Say to Aharon, reach out your hand with your staff over the rivers, canals, and ponds, and cause frogs to come up onto the land of Egypt." Aharon put out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. But the magicians did the same with their secret arts, and brought up frogs onto the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh summoned Moshe and Aharon and said, "Intercede with Adonai to take the frogs away from me and my people, and I will let the people go and sacrifice to Adonai." Moshe said to Pharaoh, "Not only that, but you can have the honor of naming the time when I will pray for you, your servants, and your people to be rid of the frogs, both yourselves and your homes, and that they stay only in the river." He answered, "Tomorrow." Moshe said, "It will be as you have said. And from this you will learn that Adonai, your God, has no equal. The frogs will leave you and your homes, also your servants and your people. They will stay in the river only." I wonder why he didn't want to be rid of it right now. I would be wanting them to be gone immediately. So I wonder why he chose the next day. Moshe and Aharon left Pharaoh's presence, and Moshe cried to Adonai about the frogs he brought on Pharaoh. Adonai did as Moshe had asked. The frogs died in the houses, courtyards, and fields. He gathered them in heaps till the land stank. But when Pharaoh saw that he had been given some relief, he made himself hard-hearted and would not listen to them, just as Adonai had said would happen. So we're seeing that sometimes God is hard in his heart, and sometimes Pharaoh is hard in his heart his own self. Adonai said to Moshe, "Say to Aharon, reach out with your staff and strike the dust on the ground. It will become lice throughout all the land of Egypt." They did it. Aharon reached out his hand with his staff and struck the dust on the ground, and there were lice on the people and animals. All the dust on the ground became lice throughout the whole land of Egypt. The magicians tried with their secret arts to produce lice, but they couldn't. There were lice on people and animals. Then the magicians said to Pharaoh, "This is the finger of God." But Pharaoh was made hard-hearted, so that he didn't listen to them, just as Adonai had said would happen. Adonai said to Moshe, "Get up early in the morning, stand before Pharaoh when he goes out to the water, and say to him, 'Here is what Adonai says. Let my people go so that they can worship me. Otherwise, if you won't let my people go, I will send swarms of insects on you, your servants, and your people, and into your houses. The houses of the Egyptians will be full of swarms of insects, and likewise the ground they stand on. But I will set apart the land of Goshen, where my people live. No swarms of insects will be there, so that you can realize that I am Adonai, right here in the land. Yes, I will distinguish between my people and your people, and this sign will happen by tomorrow." Adonai did it. Terrible swarms of insects went into Pharaoh's palace and into all his servants' houses. The insects ruined the entire land of Egypt. Pharaoh summoned Moshe and Aharon and said, "Go and sacrifice to your God here in the land." But Moshe replied, It would be inappropriate for us to do that, because the animal we sacrificed to Adonai, our God, is an abomination to the Egyptians. Won't the Egyptians stone us to death if before their very eyes we sacrifice what they consider an abomination? No, we will go 3 days' journey into the desert and sacrifice to Adonai, our God, as he has ordered us to do. Pharaoh said, I will let you go so that you can sacrifice to Adonai, your God, in the desert. Only you are not to go very far away. Intercede on my behalf. Moshe said, all right, I am going away from you, and I will intercede with Adonai, so that tomorrow swarms of insects will leave Pharaoh, his servants, and his people. Just make sure that Pharaoh stops playing games with the people by preventing them from going and sacrificing to Adonai. Moshe left Pharaoh and interceded with Adonai, and Adonai did what Moshe had asked. He removed the swarms of insects from Pharaoh, his servants, and his people. Not one remained. But this time, too, Pharaoh made himself stubborn and didn't let the people go. Chapter 9. Then Adonai said to Moshe, go to Pharaoh and tell him, here is what Adonai, the God of the Hebrews, says. Let my people go so that they can worship me. If you refuse to let them go and persist in holding on to them, the hand of Adonai is on your livestock in the field, on the horses, donkeys, camels, cattle, and flocks, and will make them suffer devastating illness. But Adonai will distinguish between Egypt's and Israel's livestock. Nothing belonging to the people of Israel will die. Adonai determined the exact time by saying, tomorrow Adonai will do this in the land. The following day, Adonai did it. All the livestock of Egypt died, but not one of the animals belonging to the people of Israel died. The Pharaoh investigated and found that not even one of the animals of the people of Israel had died. Nevertheless, Pharaoh's heart remained stubborn, and he didn't let the people go. Adonai said to Moshe and Aharon, take handfuls of ashes from a kiln, and let Moshe throw them in the air before Pharaoh's eyes. They will turn into fine dust over all the land of Egypt, and become infected sores on men and animals throughout Egypt. So they took ashes from a kiln, stood in front of Pharaoh, and threw them in the air, and they became infected sores on men and animals. The magicians couldn't even stand in Moshe's presence because of the sores, which were on them as well as on other Egyptians. But Adonai made Pharaoh hard-hearted, so that he didn't listen to them, just as Adonai had said to Moshe. Adonai said to Moshe, get up early in the morning, stand before Pharaoh, and say to him, here is what Adonai says, let my people go, so that they can worship me. For this time I will inflict my plagues on you, yourself, and on your officials and your people, so that you will realize that I am without equal in all the earth. By now I could have stretched out my hand and struck you and your people with such severe plagues that you would have been wiped off the earth. But it is for this very reason that I have kept you alive, to show you my power, and so that my name may resound throughout the whole earth. Since you are still setting yourself up against my people and not letting them go, tomorrow, about this time, I will cause a hailstorm so heavy that Egypt has had nothing like it from the day it was founded until now. Therefore, send and hurry to bring indoors all your livestock and everything else you have in the field, for hail will fall on every human being and animal left in the field that hasn't been brought home, and they will die. Whoever among Pharaoh's servants feared what Adonai had said had his slaves and livestock escape into the houses. But those who had no regard for what Adonai had said left their slaves and livestock in the field. Adonai said to Moshe, reach out your hand toward the sky so that there will be hail in all the land of Egypt, falling on people, animals, everything growing in the field throughout the land of Egypt. Moshe reached out with his hand toward the sky, and Adonai sent thunder and hail, and fire ran down to the earth. Adonai caused it to hail on the land of Egypt, it hailed, and fire flashed up with the hail. It was terrible, worse than any hailstorm in all of Egypt since it became a nation. Throughout all the land of Egypt, the hail struck everything in the field, people and animals, and the hail struck every plant growing in the field and broke every tree there. But in the land of Goshen, where the people of Israel were, there was no hail. Pharaoh summoned Moshe and Aharon and said to them, "This time I have sinned. Adonai is in the right. I and my people are in the wrong. Intercede with Adonai. We can't take any more of this terrible thunder and hail, and I will let you go. You will stay no longer." Moshe said to him, "As soon as I have gone out of the city, I will spread out my hands to Adonai. The thunder will end, and there won't be any more hail, so that you can know that the earth belongs to Adonai. But you and your servants, I know you still won't fear Adonai, God." The flax and barley were ruined, because the barley was ripe and the flax and bud. But the wheat and buckwheat were not ruined, because they come up later. Moshe went out of the city, away from Pharaoh, and spread out his hands to Adonai. The thunder and hail ended, and the rain stopped pouring down on the earth. When Pharaoh saw that the rain, hail, and thunder had ended, he sinned still more by making himself hard-hearted, he and his servants. Pharaoh was made hard-hearted, and he didn't let the people of Israel go, just as Adonai had said through Moshe. So I want you to make a note that the flax and barley were ruined because they were already up, and that comes out along the spring of the year, around this time, around the month of Nisan, which is like around March, April, like that. And then, like 50 days after Passover is when Jews do celebrate the first fruits, and that is when about the time that the buckwheat and the wheat are ripe. So, and I'll show you how that why I'm wanting to make it out of this soon. Chapter 10. Adonai said to Moshe, "Go to Pharaoh, for I have made him and his servants hard-hearted, so that I can demonstrate these signs of mine among them, so that you can tell your son and grandson about what I did to Egypt, and about my signs that I demonstrated among them, and so that you will all know that I am Adonai." Moshe and Aharon went into Pharaoh and said to him, "Here's what Adonai, God of the Hebrews, says. How much longer will you refuse to submit to me? Let my people go so that they can worship me. Otherwise, if you refuse to let my people go, tomorrow I will bring locusts into your territory. One won't be able to see the ground, so completely will the locusts cover it. They will eat anything you still have that escaped the hail, including every tree you have growing in the field. They will fill your houses and those of your servants and of all the Egyptians. It will be like nothing your fathers or their fathers have ever seen since the day they were born until today." Then he turned his back and left. Pharaoh's servants said to him, "How much longer must this fellow be a snare for us? Let the people go and worship Adonai their God. Don't you understand yet that Egypt is being destroyed?" So Moshe and Aharon were brought up to Pharaoh again, and he said to them, "With our young and our old, our sons and our daughters." Sorry. Let me start over again. So Moshe and Aharon were brought to Pharaoh again, and he said to them, "Go, worship your God." "But who exactly is going?" Moshe answered, "We will go with our young and our old, our sons and our daughters. We will go with our flocks and herds, for we must celebrate a feast to Adonai." Pharaoh said to them, "Adonai certainly will be with you if I ever let you go with your children. It's clear that you are up to no good. Nothing doing. Just some men among you may go and worship Adonai. That's what you want, isn't it?" And they were driven out of Pharaoh's presence. Adonai said to Moshe, "Reach out your hand over the land of Egypt so that locusts will invade the land and eat every plant that the hill has left." Moshe reached out with his staff over the land of Egypt, and Adonai caused an east wind to blow on the land all day and all night. And in the morning the east wind brought the locusts. The locusts went up over all the land of Egypt and settled throughout Egypt's territory. It was an invasion more severe than there had ever been before or will ever be again. They completely covered the ground so that the ground looked black. They ate every plant growing from the ground and all the fruit of the trees up on the hill. Not one green thing remained, not a tree, not a plant in the field, in all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh hurried to summon Moshe and Aharon and said, "I have sinned against you. I have sinned against Adonai your God and against you. Now, therefore, please forgive my sin, just this once, and intercede with Adonai your God, so that he will at least take away from me this deadly plague." He went out from Pharaoh and interceded with Adonai. Adonai reversed the wind and made it blow very strongly from the west. It took up the locusts and drove them into the Sea of Suf. Not one locust remained on Egyptian soil. But Adonai made Pharaoh hard-hearted, and he didn't let the people of Israel go. So here's one thing that I wanted to point out to you. So, between the plague of hail and the plague of the locusts, there's, probably around about 50 days. Give or take a few days. So it's not like one day and then the next. It's these plagues are going on over a long period of time. I always just assumed that it was within just a few weeks or maybe a month or a little over a month. But we're seeing that it's taken a while, and so these are coming along probably along about like when the first fruits of this year happen. It'll be along about May. So depending on when exactly, I can't give an exact date, but it's probably like May, June, summer's long there probably, when this plague of locusts happen. And that's just another reminder to us that when we're going through something and it seems like it's taken forever, that it's God's got it in the works. It's just certain things need to happen before our deliverance happens, but it will happen. So verse 21, Adonai said to Moshe, "Reach out your hand toward the sky, and there will be darkness over the land of Egypt, darkness so thick it can be felt." Moshe reached out his hand toward the sky, and there was a thick darkness in the entire land of Egypt for 3 days. People couldn't see each other, and no one went anywhere for 3 days. But all the people of Israel had light in their homes. Pharaoh summoned Moshe and said, "Go worship Adonai. Only leave your flocks and herds behind. Your children may go with you." Moshe answered, "You must also see to it that we have sacrifices and burnt offerings, so that we can sacrifice Adonai our God. Our livestock will also go with us. Not a hoof will be left behind, because we must choose some of them to worship Adonai our God, and we don't know which ones we will need to worship Adonai until we get there." But Adonai made Pharaoh hard-hearted, and he would not let them go. Pharaoh said to them, "Get away from me, and you had better not see my face again, because the day you see my face, you will die." Moshe answered, "Well spoken. I will see your face and no more." Chapter 11. Adonai said to Moshe, I'm going to bring still one more plague on Pharaoh in Egypt, and after that he will let you leave here. When he does let you go, he will throw you out completely. Now tell the people that every man is to ask his neighbor and every woman her neighbor for gold and silver jewelry. Adonai made the Egyptians favorably disposed toward the people. Moreover, Moshe was regarded by Pharaoh's servants and the people as a very great man in the land of Egypt. Moshe said, Here's what Adonai says. About midnight I will go out into Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt will die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh sitting on his throne, to the firstborn of the slave girl at the handmill, and all the firstborn of the livestock. There will be a horrendous wailing throughout all the land of Egypt. There's never been another like it, and there never will be again. But not even a dog's growl will be heard against any of the people of Israel, neither against people nor against animals. In this way you will realize that Adonai distinguishes between Egyptians and Israel. All your servants will come down to me, prostrate themselves before me, and say, Get out, you and all the people who follow you. And after that I will go out. And he went out from Pharaoh in the heat of anger. And I said to Moshe, Pharaoh will not listen to you, so that still more of my wonders will be shown in the land of Egypt. And Moshe and Aharon did all these wonders before Pharaoh, but Adonai had made Pharaoh hard-hearted, and he didn't let the people of Israel leave his land. Chapter 12. Adonai spoke to Moshe and Aharon in the land of Egypt. He said, You are to begin your calendar with this month. It will be the first month of the year for you. And it used to be called Aviv, but it got, I'm not exactly when or why, but Aviv is now called Nisan. Speak to all the assembly of Israel and say, On the 10th day of this month, each man is to take a lamb or kid from his family, one per household, except that if the household is too small for a whole lamb or kid, then he and his next door neighbors should share one, dividing it in proportion to the number of people eating it. Your animal must be without defect, and male in its first year, and you may choose it from either the sheep or the goats. You are to keep it until the 14th day of the month, and then the entire assembly of the community of Israel will slaughter it at dusk. They are to take some of the blood and smear it on the two sides and top of the door frame at the entrance of the house in which they eat it. That night they are to eat the meat, roasted in the fire. They are to eat it with matzah and maror, bitter herbs. Don't eat it raw or boiled, but roast it in the fire with its head, the lower parts of its legs, and its inner organs. Let nothing of it remain till morning. If any of it does remain, burn it up completely. This is how you are to eat it, with your belt fastened, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your right hand. Let me start that verse over again. Here is how you are to eat it, with your belt fastened, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand. And you are to eat it hurriedly. It is Adonai's Pesach, Passover. For that night I will pass through the land of Egypt and kill all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both men and animals, and I will execute judgment against all the gods of Egypt. I am Adonai. The blood will serve you as a sign marking the houses where you are. When I see the blood, I will pass over. Hebrew word is Pesach. When I strike the land of Egypt, the death blow will not strike you. This will be a day for you to remember and celebrate as a festival to Adonai. From generation to generation you are to celebrate it by a perpetual regulation. For 7 days you are to eat matzah. On the first day remove the leaven from your houses. Whoever eats hametz, leavened bread, from the first to the 7th day is to be cut off from Israel. On the 1st and 7th days you are to have an assembly set aside for God. On these days no work is to be done, except what each must do to prepare his food. You may only do that. You are to observe the festival of Matzah, for on this very day I brought your divisions out of the land of Egypt. Therefore, you are to observe this day from generation to generation by perpetual regulation. From the evening of the 14th day of the first month until the evening of the 21st day, you are to eat matzah. During those 7 days, no leaven is to be found in your houses. Whoever eats food with hametz is to be cut off from the community of Israel. It doesn't matter whether he is a foreigner or a citizen of the land. Eat nothing with hametz in it. Wherever you live, eat matzah. Then Moshe called for all the leaders of Israel and said, select and take lambs for your families and slaughter the Pesach lamb. Take a bunch of hyssop leaves and dip it in the blood which is in the basin, and smear it on the 2 sides and top of the door frame. Then none of you is to go out the door of his house until morning. For Adonai will pass through to kill the Egyptians. But when he sees the blood on the top and on the 2 sides, Adonai will pass over the door and will not allow the slaughterer to enter your houses and kill you. You are to observe this as a law, you and your descendants forever. When you come to the land which Adonai will give you, as he has promised, you are to observe the ceremony. When your children ask you, what do you mean by the ceremony? Say, it is the sacrifice of Adonai's Pesach, because Adonai passed over the houses of the people of Israel in Egypt when he killed the Egyptians but spared our houses. The people of Israel bowed their heads and worshipped. Then the people of Israel went and did as Adonai had ordered Moshe and Aharon. That is what they did. At midnight, Adonai killed all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh sitting on his throne to the firstborn of the prisoner in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of livestock. Pharaoh got up in the night, he, all his servants, and all the Egyptians, and there was horrendous wailing in Egypt, for there wasn't a single house without someone dead in it. He summoned Moshe and Aharon by night and said, up and leave my people, both you and the people of Israel, and go, serve Adonai as you said. Take both your flocks and your herds, as you said. Get out of here. But bless me too. The Egyptians pressed to send the people out of the land quickly, because they said, otherwise we'll all be dead. The people took their dough before it had become leavened and wrapped their kneading bowls in their clothes on their shoulders. The people of Israel had done what Moshe had said. They had asked the Egyptians to give them silver and gold jewelry and clothing, and Adonai had made the Egyptians so favorably disposed for the people that they let them have whatever they requested. Thus they plundered the Egyptians. The people of Israel traveled from Ramses to Sukkot, some 600,000 men on foot, not counting children. A mixed crowd also went up with them, as well as livestock in large numbers, both flocks and herds. So the mixed crowd would be like Egyptians, or anybody they could have been Egyptians with them, there could have been people from other nations who were brought in as slaves. Just anybody who wanted to go and follow Adonai, whether they were slaves in Egypt or not, they went up. So this isn't just Abraham's blood seed that is going up. It's also those of us who are grafted in. They baked matzah loaves from the dough they had brought out of Egypt, since it was unleavened, because they had been driven out of Egypt without time to prepare supplies for themselves. The time the people of Israel lived in Egypt was 430 years. At the time of 430 years, to the day, all the divisions of Adonai left the land of Egypt. This was a night when Adonai kept vigil to bring them out of the land of Egypt, and this same night continues to be a night when Adonai keeps vigil for all the people of Israel through all their generations. Adonai said to Moshe and Aharon, "This is a regulation for the Pesach lamb. No foreigner is to eat it. But if anyone has a slave he bought for money, when you have circumcised him, he may eat it. Neither a traveler nor a hired servant may eat it. It is to be eaten in one house. You are not to take any of the meat outside the house, and you are not to break any of its bones. The whole community of Israel is to keep it. If a foreigner staying with you wants to observe Adonai's Pesach, all his males must be circumcised. Then he may take part and observe it. He will be like a citizen of the land, but no uncircumcised person is to eat it. The same teaching is to apply equally to the citizen and to the foreigner living among you." All the people of Israel did just as Adonai had ordered Moshe and Aharon. On that very day, Adonai brought the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt by their divisions. So the next video will start in chapter 13. And I hope you all have a wonderful and blessed day. Bye-bye.